Hi, Gene Burnett from geneburnett.com. Did you hear that bell? That is the random interval timer. It's a website that I just recently launched because a friend of mine made me a training tool that I decided to just throw up on a website and offer to the public because I think it's a useful one. It's a random interval timer. You go to this site and you have a timer there, and you can set the minimum and maximum interval that the timer will go off. And in this case, it's a bell, which I call gentle reminder. And when it goes off, as I make this video, I'm going to sit up a little straighter and take a full breath. I also have a reaction time tone where when that goes off, I usually throw a few punches. Just beep, throw a punch. So you can pick either sound, and you can change the interval, adjust the interval in between which the sounds will happen. randomintervaltimer.com. It's free. There's a donation jar there if you want to toss me a few bucks or whatever. There's a donation jar here. There's one on my website, geneburnett.com. All voluntary. Just if you feel like contributing to the work I'm doing, then obviously I would love that, but not expected or necessary. So that's going to go off periodically, and when it does, I'm going to sit up a little straighter and take a breath. So I'm not sure what I'm going to call this video. I might call it Why Hide the Physics? Why make it subtle, tiny, imperceivable? Why do that in martial arts? You see this all the time. Somebody will stand with their feet right next to each other, parallel, shoulder width, and they'll have somebody push on them. And they'll have somebody push on them, and they will maintain their posture while that push is happening. So what they're doing is they're directing that force through physics down into their body. That's what they're doing. And they're also have an agreement with the person who's coming that that push is somewhat contrived. That person is not pushing them the way a high school wrestler would push them if you told them, I'll give you $1,000 towards college if you push that person over. Okay? It's your student, it's your acolyte is coming up to you to give you a push, right? And you will see this when someone takes a push like that, right? You'll see this same thing every single time if you watch it in slow motion. The person is standing like this. Here comes the push. Just as that push gets there, the receiving person will lean forward and extend their structure into that push a little bit. They'll always do this. I've watched hundreds of these. They always do this. Always. They never go like this. They never lean backwards. They incline slightly forward. So you're pushing. I was in New York City for a while when I was younger, and we had these locks on the doors here, and there was like a bar, like a crowbar that latched into the lock. A crowbar that latched into the lock and went right down into the ground. There was a little bracket down there in it. This pole kept the door from opening. No matter how much they pushed, they have to literally snap this crowbar to open the door. So that's what they're doing. They're making the physics super, super subtle. Why make the physics so subtle when they will not work on a serious opponent, on a serious force? They'll only work with contrived, like a push where you and the pusher understand how much and kind of where and how deep to push, right? Well, one reason is because you enjoy that. It's kind of enjoyable to do subtle physics where you just sort of set your arm up in a certain way and they try to bend it or they try to move it, and you use subtle physics to drive that force down into the ground. It's fun. You may learn from this practice. You may learn from making the physics really subtle so that you learn the force lines, you feel them in your body. It can be a nice learning tool, right? It can also be for ego and money, because you can kind of pitch the idea that there's something magical about what you're doing, or something that requires deep, deep understanding of energy and chi and meridians and spiritual planes and stuff. You can use it to kind of attract people into your orbit so that you can sell your stuff. So why not make the physics obvious? Why not start big and then take it down to maybe medium-sized movements? Movements that keep you strong and flexible enough to do what you want to do without injury. Why try to hide the physics? You can only do that by contriving the attacks in some way. You know subtle doesn't generally work with a full-on attack from someone who wishes you ill coming at you. I saw a guy take a push or shove, whatever the fuck it was, on one leg. You know you can't take a one-legged push from someone who means business. You know that. So why spend all this time making it so little and magical looking? Why not make it bigger and make it strong so that you can really feel the work that that takes, and you can take less and less and less contrived shoves or pushes? They even played in slow motion when the guy was on one neck. And of course, the attack was contrived. And yes, he took it on one leg. And yes, you can see what you always see in these cases. The receiver leans in slightly while engaging their structure so that the push lands on this slanted vector into the strongest aspect of the back leg. Even if you could receive a real push this way, you're still in a terrible position to receive the next 5 unplanned, unpredictable moves that the other person is going to make if they're for real, right? So why do that? So for this reason, I just gave up on subtle and contrived. For any sense of real-world application. I still like subtle, and I like choreographed or mutually limited practice drills. Drills that improve my neuromuscular connection, smooth my kinetic chains, teach my body about its movement options. I like that stuff, but I don't pretend it's more than building certain attributes. The attributes that I'm pretty sure I'm likely to need as I get older, whether or not I have to defend myself physically, do not involve subtle physics or tricks. They involve very unsubtle physics. Gravity is pushing down on me all the time. I don't subtly align with it. I align with it the best I can, because if I don't, it's going to break me, right? So most combat sports, daily life, fights, trouble in life, physically, all that stuff involve unsubtle physics. So for that reason, I like to practice like this. I'm gonna show you a little bit of a practice here. So I'm gonna show this to you solo. I don't really have time to get a partner to do this. So oh, that bell rang. Take a breath, slow down. It's good practice. I'm just gonna bring this to about there. Okay. All right. Okay, can you see my whole body? Yes, you can. So if I'm standing like this, right, and somebody comes up to me and they're going to give me a push to my chest, if we contrive that push to be gentle when it first comes and then gradually increase, but not too much, like that, when that comes, I can just lean forward slightly and extend my structure into that pressure. That would be the subtle. Boom. And it can be done subtler and subtler depending on how much strength and alignment you have. It can be very subtle, but you'll never see them do this. You'll never see them take that push and move backwards. It's always slightly forward, right? Now, if you have that partner, gradually increase the intensity of that push and shorten that period of time when they first get there. That gives you a chance to adjust. If they gradually do that a little bit harder and a little bit more intent and a little bit firmer and firmer, you'll reach the point where you can't do this anymore, where it'll knock you back like that. So when receiving a push, if you want to stay in a functional relationship with that pressure, there's 3 points that have to be in a line. Your contact with the ground, your center of gravity, and your contact with the force itself. So if somebody's pushing on my chest, for instance, that's the contact point. Here's my center of gravity. I don't want my center of gravity directly underneath that contact point. I want it slightly back, and I want my back foot behind that. Or if they're going to push my hands, even better. If they're going to push my arms, something out here, you can see it better. 1, 2, 3. those things have to be in a line. The subtle version does that. The subtle version does that. When you incline forward slightly, 1 or 1, 2, 3 are in line. Or if you want to do it according to how important they are, 1, 2, 3, they are in line, right? When the bigger push comes, they still have to be in line. So the way I practice it is staying on my right leg, but taking my left leg back behind me. So when that pressure comes, there. There. So the pressure comes, I'm just going to use my right leg this time. The pressure comes, it's going to move me over my center. If I don't do anything, my center is going to be behind, or the pressure is going to be behind my center and my foot, over I go. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to stay right there with the contact place, and I'm going to keep my center right where it is, behind that contact place, and I got to move my leg, either my right or my left, behind me so that I have leverage here, right? Subtle won't work against a big ass push. You've got to do this, right? And not only that, that big ass push may have 3 medium to large to small other pushes coming right after it, trying to upset my balance or throw me to the ground, right? So wherever that pressure comes, I have to keep aligning myself functionally with that pressure unless I'm going to go down, if I don't want to go down, right? So I have to have a functional alignment with pressure, which means wherever the pressure is, my center has to be on the other side of it, and my other leg has to be behind it so I can take it. So a solo exercise is just to imagine a push coming from any direction you can think of, like from here to here on a diagonal, right? Contact, center, back leg, right? Forward coming back this way, contact, center, back leg. I'm not going all the way back there. I'm not doing this. I'm staying on my front leg, so I have this give here, right? That's the functional alignment, right? So you just imagine a push from wherever, from wherever, from wherever. And you align your body so that you can receive that pressure into the ground, right? Now this is... So this is a way of receiving force, but not being subtle. It's not about subtle. That's fun, it's interesting, it's educational, but it's not training against the real push. And people who pitch that are lying. They're being dishonest. They're trying to create a cult or a mystique around themselves that they can do that little tiny physics movement against the real push. How do I know that? They never do it against the real push. If they do it in a movie, if they do it in a demonstration or whatever, they will do their subtle physics, but it's a contrived attack. Even if they bring somebody in, they'll bring a person in and they'll set it up in such a way that they know what that attack is. If you want to have an uncontrived push, you find a college wrestler and you say, I'll give you $1,000 if you can put that guy on his butt. And this guy doesn't even know the dude. He doesn't know anything about him. That would be an uncontrived push, right? So when they come, you better have some functional alignment with that force coming at you, or you're going to be on your ass in a second. And in the case of the college wrestler, even if you do have functional alignment, you're still going to be on your ass, but at least it won't be a total blowout. So anyway, that's one example of why I and how I recognize the value of training the subtle lean in and the subtle take it to your feet part, but also recognize that that doesn't apply to real life. What applies to real life, you're walking down the street and a vending machine tips over that's outside a store on a forklift or something, you better align with that pressure. If you think you can just stand there and go, boop, and just subtly redirect it to your foot when it's, a few hundred pounds coming over this way, good luck. But I prefer to have this capacity at the ready all the time so that I can develop a functional relationship towards force. I'm not ruling out yielding or misdirecting or doing any, subtle things with that force. I'm just saying no matter what I do, I better be in some functional alignment with it first, because that's the kind of physics that sort of works in real life. Now here's a little secret. When that pressure stops coming from here, or when that pressure stops coming from here, or from here, or from here, when it stops coming, and I go, whew, that was close, the pressure hasn't ended. It's just not going laterally anymore. Now it's on top of my head. The pressure from gravity is 24/7. That's always happening. So as soon as you stop aligning structurally and functionally with force this way, it shifts to this way. People who work on forms, and yoga and health benefits of doing Qigong and those kind of things, they're working with that all the time. They recognize this. That's what you're working on all the time. They will sometimes be dismissive or critical of people who work on lateral force, like on forces coming at you from this way and that way and all that kind of stuff. They might think, oh, that's, you know, just unspiritual or fighting or brutal or whatever, but that's useful too, right? It's really good to have that, even if you're just jostled as you walk down the street or whatever. Especially as you get older, it gets more and more important. So I think it's great to have a functional structural alignment with force, regardless of where the force is coming from. If it's a subtle force, you can subtly align it into the ground. If it's a big force, you can less subtly align with it. Right? If it's the force of gravity, then you switch to that and align with that. So that wherever force is coming to your body, the contact with the force, the center of gravity, and the feet, the contact with the ground or foot, are lined up, you know, reasonably lined up. Force can be this way, force can be that way. All the time, the force is this way, right? So, train to align with force as opposed to doing tricks that make it seem as though you have the force, like Star Wars, somehow coursing through your body and you can repel attacks without having good physics. All you're doing is shrinking and hiding and making the physics really subtle, which is lovely. I like to do it too. It's fun. But if you think that equals the ability to defend yourself or to take on real, uncooperative, you know, uncontrived force, then I think you're either dreaming or you're lying. That's my opinion. If you have examples to show me of someone defying the laws of physics, which I hear of constantly, whenever I look at them, all I see is physics. I turn off the sound and listen to the malarkey hocus pocus. What I see is lining it up with they're doing physics. There's no way around it. I don't see any way around gravity. To me, the only thing that beats physics is better physics. All right, those are my opinions. I'm willing to be wrong. If you have some evidence to the contrary, I'd love to hear it. Meanwhile, I hope that you found this video useful. I would appreciate it if you'd let me know if you have. It's always nice to hear that something's useful because that's why I'm doing these videos. Until next time, Gene Burnett from GeneBurnett.com, signing off.